Hi everybody and welcome to my Unruly Housewife channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about conditioning hard clay using a product called Fimo Mix Quick, and here it is. And basically what happened to me was that a friend of mine gave me some Fimo clay because she had become incredibly frustrated with it and said it's too dry and it's too hard for me to use. Now this is supposed to be Fimo Soft. She gave me a couple of packets of this, and as you can see, soft is not really the word for it. It's very hard, it's crumbly, and it's very difficult to use. And she just threw her hands up in despair. She said to me, you can throw it in the bin if you want. And in actual fact, this was some of the other clay she gave me, and I did throw this in the bin for a while. I was so frustrated with it. This is a Fimo Effect blue metallic, and it's just, you know, it's unusably crumbly, and I wasted an evening making my thumb really sore trying to soften it up, and it wasn't working. So I literally threw it in the bin, and then I thought, this is silly, because if this clay can be used, you know, she's given me 30 bars. So I decided to investigate and buy some of this Fimo Mix Quick to see if that would solve the problem. And it did solve the problem to a certain extent, not perhaps in the way that I thought it was going to. So I'm going to do a little review and show you what I mean. So here it is the product, and it's incredibly sticky and hard to get off the paper. It's kind of like toffee, and like toffee, it's got a kind of a chewy consistency to it. It's kind of weird, and I was hoping that this was going to just be put with the clay and immediately render it soft and pliable, and that's not really what happens. If we just get the blue out of the way, and I'll use the red. As you can see, it's quite hard clay, and this Mix Quick, what it tends to do, rather than immediately softening the clay in some miraculous way, is to sort of stick it together. Now you want to use, it says you shouldn't use more than a third of Mix Quick, and you do want to use a good third, because I tried to do it at first with just a tiny bit and that didn't work at all. It's just annoying. Now the main thing it seems to me that Mix Quick does is it binds together all these little pieces of crumbly clay, because one of the hardest things when you're trying to condition clay is how crumbly it gets, and this stuff, it's like sticking the crumbly clay into chewing gum and then mixing it. So you still have a hard time, it's still hard clay, you still have a hard time getting it to go soft. You then have the problem of this Mix Quick stuff kind of marbling through it, and you have to get it mixed together. But at least when it's not crumbling to pieces all the time, the clay, you do have a fighting chance. Also, if you put the clay through the pasta machine, we all know what that's like when you feel like your clay is reasonably sort of conditioned. If it's hard clay and you've given it a good go and you put it in the pasta machine, and what happens? It crumbles to pieces between the rollers and your entire machine gets dirty. What this Mix Quick does is it helps a lot with that problem, because ultimately I like to slice my clay thinly and put it through the pasta machine to condition it. I don't want to be doing this all day. So anyway, as you can see, it takes a while. Mix Quick, it does mix it. It helps to bind it together whilst you condition it, and it does mix in. Quick, I would dispute. I think it makes the mixing less frustrating, less crumbly, and more doable. I'm not sure about how quick it is. It's still quite hard work. It warns you that it may affect the colour of the clay, and we'll have a look at that in a moment when I show you some examples that I've made. But yeah, you can see, I mean, if I was to try and, I mean, this is in no way mixed in yet. I've still got to take a while, and I'd put it through the pasta machine and things. See, that at least that won't break apart when I put it through the pasta machine. That's the good thing about it. Whereas this, if I tried to do this, I mean, I'm not even sure I could do it. Let's face it, I told you I threw it in the bin, so probably not. It's just too annoying, it just falls apart. So the Mix Quick is useful. It's not as quick as it sounds, but it does help to mix it. So let me get some examples and show you what I've made. I use the term made loosely because I haven't made anything, I've just done a couple of flat examples. These are the examples that I've made, and what I did with these was I conditioned them and then I put them through the pasta machine and then I baked them in the way that I would normally bake the clay. And these are the Fimo soft red examples, and these are the metallic blue examples. Now if you look at these, you can see that even though I'd worked quite hard to try and condition them, the metallic blue without the Mix Quick, when I put it through the pasta machine, it became quite sort of jagged at the edges, and there's quite a lot of air bubbles in it too, and it's still looking kind of cracky and weird. Whereas the one that I did with 1/3 Mix Quick is a lot smoother on the edges, and just generally looks a lot better. It's a little bit sort of streaky looking, but then metallic clay tends to do that, and I didn't work very hard on conditioning it. If I put these next to each other, you can see how much better this one is for air bubbles and things, because it was easier to condition. Now with the red, I think we have a very similar situation. Whoops, that's the bottom. You can see the lines from the pasta machine struggling to get this through. A lot worse on that one than on this one. There are more air bubbles. They're quite small, but there are more pitty air bubbles, and there's a harder edge. The Mix Quick doesn't really make the clay so much softer as make it a lot more stretchy, and as I say, kind of chewy. The chewy effect of this stuff mixes into this stuff. And what I'm going to do now is to see how strong it is, because the colour change, for instance, I don't think it really changed colour at all. I think 1/3 Mix Quick was absolutely fine. It hasn't changed colour on these. And now I will look at the flexibility. Now metallic clay is more flexible anyway, and so this is quite flexible. And look, the one with the Mix Quick in is pretty strong. I'm bending that a lot, and that seems to be fine. The one without the Mix Quick, similarly strong. So I don't think it's made any difference. It feels very much the same amount of flex. And we'll check the Fimo Soft with the Mix Quick, and that's cracking a little bit there. They were all cooked for the same amount of time, but this is not metallic, so it's slightly less flexible anyway. So yeah, there is that. Let's check out the one without the Mix Quick, and that's kind of cracking a little bit too. So that could have done with longer in the oven. I did it to the amount of time that you're supposed to bake it, but that probably could have done with a little bit longer. And I am working it pretty hard. So yeah, I think on the whole, the results with and without the Mix Quick are very much similar, with the different types of Fimo. The colour is the same, and the Mix Quick has had at least a binding effect whilst you get the clay conditioned. It was £4 for 100 grams, which is, these are 56 grams, and they're a couple of quid. So it's a very similar price to a normal Fimo. And if I can manage to save bars of Fimo that quite honestly I would have probably given up and put in the bin, because they were killing my hands trying to do them, and they were breaking up in the pasta machine. So if it can save me the money for those clays, or the gift of those clays, it's got to be worth £4. I should add, I'm a huge fan of Fimo. It's generally speaking a very strong clay, especially when I cook it for as long as I normally cook it for. It has lovely colours, and it's an extremely good quality clay. So I'm in no way suggesting that it is always like this. These bars, in my view, before my friend had them had either got very, very old in the shop, or they were stored incorrectly. Something happened. So I'm in no way saying that Fimo clay is a bad clay. It's the only one that I use, with a couple of exceptions. So yeah, I just want to say I love Fimo. This is just something you can do if your Fimo does get hard, or any of your other clays. I'm sure other clays are perfectly capable of going hard. Well, I hope that taught you something. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did enjoy it, do consider subscribing to my channel. You can follow me on Instagram or Facebook. I very much appreciate you watching. I love you all. Bye bye.